All right, advanced testing. This is Tuesday, and we are working on capture. But first, we looked at trying to review some key testing concepts. We talked about software, and I said, well, how do you think IE is tested versus Firefox? And the students had a lot of comments. First of all, they said, well, IE is Microsoft. Microsoft, we would assume, have a very structured form of testing, similar to what we covered in the class. And then they said Firefox is more open source. So there we reviewed a little bit about what open source means. The source code is open, people can go in and adjust it and so forth. So they said, well, how is this tested? Because we have a pretty good grasp on what Microsoft may or may not do. They probably have quality assurance people, quality control, and all that built in. And we talked about some examples of how they manage that and manage ad hoc testing and so forth. Where we said open source always has fresh eyes. So we were talking about it's a lot of ad hoc probably. Could be a huge number of testers. Could be a huge number of testers. And they're always gathering information about the source code and adjusting it on the fly. You know, some of that's good, some of that could be bad. I talked a little bit about the comparison of a couple of operating systems, Win 7 and Fedora. We installed in Fedora lately, and there's a place where you can send your install in on how it was managed, and there's a place you can click to where they monitor your use of Fedora. Okay? So they are constantly gathering information from their testers who are the actual users of the software. Okay? Now, then we talked a little bit about, you know, these can be some advantages, what are the disadvantages. No, I guess I meant to write professionals, but I say professions, but it's like there's no structure to this testing necessarily. Now there's probably a lot of structure with the people designing or working on the open source or adjusting it, but you know, by the developers, but there may not be much structure to test it. So there's like no test plan, combinatorial tables and test flow diagrams, what kind of clean room testing that where they're actually measuring what it is, getting those extremes. So a lot of people, when they test browsers, they're comparing them, like how does Firefox compare to IE in terms of that. So not having a structure, you may not get all of the particular areas of the software tested like you would like, if that makes any sense. So this was the first part of class. We talked about this testing area. Here we talked about software, open source versus a structured. And we mentioned Microsoft, but it could be Adobe, it could be all kinds of companies that produce commercial software, proprietary software versus open source. Then we talked about the whole idea of capture, and we just reviewed a little bit how you plan it, you run a test to make sure you're going to capture what you want, and then you actually do the test, look at the results, and then those results are saved. And if in those results you have this script that indicates what you did step by step by step, and there then we have that possibility, if we entered some data during that, okay, then we can take a look at the script and we can see then where we might be able to produce a spreadsheet that will put in a large amount of data. So the concept is here, what we're trying to make the point of today is you can use your capture software and maybe run a piece of software for maybe 15 minutes. Then you can go in and add enough extra data so that it will run the same process maybe another hour, just as an example. Okay? And that's some of the advantages of the capture. You can add data without actually having to sit there and add all the different options you want it to do, all the different data values that you maybe are checking, and then you can let the capture software run through it and check it for you, or actually complete some tasks. We mentioned this software can be expensive or not so expensive, but when you relate it to the fact that if you can have some software do some mundane, repetitive tasks that humans would do, that frees up your people to plan better tests, to plan the next test, or be more creative in the sense of, even if the software is fairly expensive, if it frees up some man hours, that could be actually more cost efficient in the future. And then, of course, the whole idea of regression. You can have this set up to test one part of your software, and then you could have, even though you have a change to a different part of the software, you still have to see if it affects this part, so you can just let the computer go through and test that part and then look at the results. So that's it for today.